Welcome to the Able Skills Basic Plumbing tutorial from our series of DVD tutorials. In this DVD, you will be taught the various stages and techniques involved in basic plumbing, allowing you to prepare and join pipework and everything you need to know to fit a full bathroom suite. Once complete, you'll be able to take on a wide range of plumbing jobs with confidence. For this section, you will need a 15mm pipe cutter, a 22mm pipe cutter, a set of pipe benders, and a 90-degree set square, all of which are available from your local plumber's merchant. Before you begin, you will need to prepare your pipework and choose the suitable pipes for the job you are tackling. Copper pipes are used for all plumbing jobs where the pipes are not on show. An example would be where pipes run under floors and behind walls. Copper pipes are hard-wearing and joints are soldered, ensuring good, strong connections throughout. Whatever project you're tackling, your pipes have to be cut to suit the workspace. You will need to use the pipe cutter for a 15mm pipe. For our demonstration, we are using one with an opening point at the top. It simply opens up, you slot the pipe in between, line the blade up where you want to cut, and close the top. Holding the pipe firmly, grip the cutters and turn in the direction indicated. As well as cutting pipes, to be able to fit tight spaces and lay out pipe runs around obstacles, we must bend the copper pipes. When bending pipes, you will need a set of benders. You can get standard 15mm benders, but the ones we're demonstrating are a combination model capable of bending 15mm and 22mm. There is a stop at the back, the roller, and formers. Included is a guide. This one is a 15mm guide, and there is also a 22mm guide available. When you are using the benders, there is a gap at this point here. If you keep that gap parallel with the roller, the benders are fully open. If you open them too much, you cannot operate the stop. Always lay the benders down, keeping the gap and the handle on the right-hand side, so we can apply the power to the right-hand side. There are two methods for pipe bending. One is precision bending, and the other is estimated bending. With precision bending, you need a set start point. For the demonstration, we will use this end for the set start point. Measure down 200mm and then mark the pipe with a nice clear line. We're going to bend this pipe 90 degrees, so slot the pipe in, bring up the stop. The guide will fit in, curly side towards the pipe and the flat side towards the roller. All benders have a slack built in, so you must taper the slack by closing the benders slightly. By doing this, the pipe will be held firmly in place. The point where we drew the line is where we want to bend 90 degrees. The 90-degree mark needs to be perfectly level with the outside of the former, and that will give us 200mm from the fixed point to the back of the pipe, where the pipe bends round. The pipe sits perfectly in the former, and the back edge is in line. Using your set square, line it up on the edge of the former. You need the line to be in perfect alignment with the edge of that square. Pick up the benders, apply power with your right hand, keeping an eye on the measurement. Take power off the bender and slacken slightly. You will see that the standing end has not moved, and the running end has been bent. So line your set square up on the standing end and check against the running end to make sure it is 90 degrees. Check the measurement by taking the pipe out of the bender, lining up the set square on the back of the pipe, and you should get a 200mm measurement. It works exactly the same the other way around. Sometimes you will need to put more than one bend in, but it has to go in a different direction, so the same principles apply. We will now add another bend to this pipe. It will have the same measurements as the other bend. Measure 200mm from the straight edge and mark the pipe. We must measure from the bend, so this end must go into the top of the bender, and we want the pipe to go the other way. Now, if you've noticed, we've applied pressure with the right hand, So we've moved the pipe to the left. We're now going to move this to the right, to turn it upside down like that. Exactly the same as before. We have to check that we have a 90-degree plane across the pipeline and the former, which is in line there. Use a set square to check the alignment. You may need to move the pipe slightly if it's not in line with the pencil line. Once happy that this is all in line, pull it round and lay the bender down. This is now our standing end because it hasn't moved. Use a set square again to check that the pipe is bent 90 degrees. Practice this if you feel you need to. If you bend the pipes the wrong way, it's not the end of the world. You can cut the pipe and solder the cut end onto the other end, using a straight connector. If you find this method difficult, then you can use estimated bending. To do this, we will use an estimated measurement from the top of the pipe, which is slightly larger than between the gap and the hole in the wall. The end you measure from must always go in the top of the bender. Use your plumber's eye to get an approximate 90-degree bend, and then use your set square to check that it is a 90-degree angle. The copper pipes to be used for hot and cold water feed are 15mm and 22mm. These are for the hot and cold feed in. You can get the equivalent in plastic, but it's more expensive, and copper will stand the test of time. The bath waste pipe is 1.5-inch 40mm plastic. For the basin you use 1.25-inch 32mm plastic. 1.5-inch is also used for kitchen sinks and for shell basins. For this section you'll require a roll of lead-free solder, a pot of flux, a propane-powered blowtorch, a roll of PTFE tape, and a 15mm and 22mm pipe cleaner or some wire wool. In this section we will show you the different types of pipe joints and the methods in which these can be applied. All the parts shown are available from a local plumber's merchant. The first thing we will cover is end feed capillary fittings. And they're called end feed because you must add solder to the end of the joint once you've cleaned it. These are the cheapest version available, which means there is a lot more work, as you have to clean all the joining surfaces, add the flux, add the solder, and the heat. These are available in different sizes, the main ones being elbow, T-piece, (15mm) T-piece between 22mm, and various shapes and sizes, working your way up. The next one up from an end feed is a solder ring fitting, also sometimes known as a Yorkshire fitting. These are pre-soldered for you, so you have to clean them, add the flux, and when you add the heat, the solder will run out through the joint, securing it in place. These again come in various sizes, T-piece, elbow, and various different T-shapes depending on your job. They are all relatively easy to use. All you have to do is add heat. If you can't or don't want to use heat, then you can use compression fittings. A compression fitting compresses an olive into the joint between the nut and the fitting itself. The olive gets put in place, the nut goes into place over the top, put the pipe in between, and the olive is compressed between the pipe and the fitting, closing the seal. Again, they come in different sizes, 22mm elbows, T-pieces, and straight connectors. This is called speed or push fitting. Very simple. You undo the joint, push the pipe in, close it tight, and the joint is sealed. Different types of fitting are 22mm T, 22 to 15mm branch, 22mm straight connector, and there are other various adaptations you can also use. The copper joints are solder joints. They will last for as long as the copper pipe does, and these should be used where you cannot gain access easily. The compression fittings and speed fit fittings should only be used where you can gain access, because they will require maintenance. They should not be used behind walls or under floors. The first thing we will demonstrate is an end feed capillary fitting. This is the most common fitting, mainly due to the fact that they're much cheaper than the alternatives and give a strong join. To begin, hold in the vise. If you don't have a vise, then you must use a heat-proof surface. Never solder without the proper protection. Use a cleaning tool for copper pipes set to 15mm or 22mm. These are freely available from any plumber's merchant or DIY shop. Alternatively, you can use wire wool. The active flux prevents any further oxidization and also acts as a lubricant for the solder to run around the fitting by capillary traction. The solder you use has to be lead-free. This is because it's a water source, so the pipe must not contain lead. For the demonstration, we will be using a trigger-operated gas torch. There are other torches on the market. Any blowtorch will do. Trigger-operated torches are more expensive, but they give you more control over the flame. You must use propane gas for soldering. We will show you how to prepare this torch, but you should follow any instructions with safety guidelines included with your own. You must check to make sure the power button is set to off, and the gas nozzle is also switched off. Check the threads for damage, and check the threads on your gas bottle. Then screw the bottle gently into the torch, hand tight only. Smell the joint to make sure there is no gas escaping. If there's no smell of gas, then you have a good seal. If there is a smell of gas, you need to replace the bottle or the torch accordingly. Switch the torch on, switch the gas on, and the torch is now operated by the trigger. You must clean up all the bits of pipe. All the surfaces to join must be cleaned. Some of these jobs can be done prior to fitting, but if you must join the pipes in situ, make sure that you put a heat-proof background behind the pipe so as to reduce the risk of fire. Once all surfaces are clean, you must apply the flux. This must be applied to all the joins inside and outside the pipes. The joint is now ready for soldering. The blowtorch will bring the copper up to temperature. The solder will melt from the heat of the copper. Do not melt the solder with the flame. So when you're adding the solder, the torch must be off, otherwise you melt the solder before it's in the joint. Move the flame across left to right, adding the solder as you go. Test the joint with the solder. If it's not hot enough, then continue to apply the flame. Push about 10mm of solder into each joint. You must look for a silver ring all the way around each join. When you see this silver ring, there is enough solder in the join and it's secure. When you finish soldering, you must ensure that you turn the gas torch off. Once you've finished, leave it to cool for a few minutes. Always proceed with caution to prevent burning. Excess flux around the joints will cause brown spotting. Take a slightly damp cloth and wipe over the joints, removing all excess flux. Otherwise the pipe will turn green. With a solder ring fitting, you must do the same as before, except you do not have to add the solder as it's already been applied for you. So, as before, make sure all the pipe ends are clean. You must still remember to add flux to help the solder run around the joint and to prevent oxidization. This time, you do not need to add solder, so you apply heat to the join and wait for a solder ring to appear at the join ends. A solder ring fitting is 3 times the price of an end feed piece. But for people who have little experience in DIY, the solder ring fitting is an easier way to join copper pipes. It is important to ensure that the join has cooled sufficiently before handling it, otherwise the join can crack. If it cracks, then you must discard the joint and start again. We will now show you compression fittings. For this, you will need an adjustable spanner. To help with a good seal on a compression fitting, we recommend you use PTFE tape or a joining compound on the end of the pipe. It's preferable to use PTFE tape because it's easy to use and will help gain a good seal. It is simply a white tape that you wrap around the end of the pipe, usually about 2 turns worth. Once applied, push the end into the join, forming a tight seal. Bring up the olive, and then the nut. Tighten the nut firmly with your fingers, and then tighten with your spanner. Be careful not to over-tighten because it will crush the olive and you will see it begin to appear under the nut. This means it's being crushed and not compressed. If this happens, you must break the joint, add some more PTFE tape, replace the olive, and start again. If you crush the pipe, then you must replace it. This is the speed fit or push fit connection and is very simple to use. You simply loosen the